All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is the opencv library. Opencv stands for Open Computer Vision, and it's an open source library that gives us a bunch of image processing tools, as well as some sort of more advanced computer vision style tools that let us use machine learning and some other advanced techniques to try to do interpretation of camera images that we get in various ways. Now, for this particular assignment, homework 8, we don't need most of the power of opencv, but I want to give a couple examples of the sort of thing that opencv can do. And I've installed opencv from the Debian repository, as I'm running Debian 10. I expect that the packages are the same on Ubuntu. You might have to change versions slightly. In fact, there's not even versions in the thing, but you might get a slightly different version of opencv. So, in either case, the Debian or Ubuntu packages are going to give you the examples for opencv over in user share doc opencv doc examples. So if you look in there, you can see these directories of examples that we have. The examples that I'm showing come from the CPP directory, which is the C++ example code. A lot of the examples here are in Python, and there's some argument that porting your robot control to Python, including accurately porting the robot module, might make some of this stuff easier. I think for this particular assignment, that's not a good idea, but it's allowed. If you do an accurate port of the program to Python, you can use it. But for the final project, if you're doing any computer vision stuff, working in Python might be simpler, just because there's more sample code and some of the stuff is clearer in Python, even though if you write any of your own code in Python, it tends to be significantly slower. In any case, I have this directory here where I have some of the opencv sample programs along with a makefile. And I also have some example images. So if I say eog maze1.ping, we can see we have this just random screenshot that I took of the gazebo maze, where we have some ground, some wall, and some sky. Not an especially useful screenshot, not actually exactly from the angle that the camera comes from, but it's sufficient just to do some stuff on it. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to run edge detection on it. So if I run the edge program, these examples, a lot of them take this maze, or take a image as their first input. So I'm going to pass in maze1.ping, E. There we go. So you can see here that we end up, I guess I need to be at the bottom again. We end up with sort of two versions of that image where edge detection has been run. And if I crank up the edge detection threshold, you can see that we end up with like more stuff that is detected. Like the grid on the floor goes away as we get up past 10 threshold, and we can get like pretty clearly individual bricks in the wall up around 25 threshold for just canny edge detection with a Sobel gradient, whatever that means. You look at the example code to see how to do it. Figuring out what it means, you might have to go look at the documentation a little bit more. Another thing that the example program gives us is this variant version that, if we crank ourselves up to a 25, the numbers don't even mean the same thing. So we get sort of similar results here with a threshold of around 100. And I can't actually see a meaningful difference between these two images, but this gives us where the edges are, which might be useful for something. This at least simplifies the image if we're then going to do further processing on it. All right, another thing that we can do is line detection. So here we've done some sort of edge detection, I think, which is the white, and then the red is places where we've detected lines. And this is potentially useful if we were trying to build a robot that like followed street lines to try to like do lane following in a robotic car. I don't know if this is especially useful for this particular assignment, but it's good to know that it's here. Another kind of interesting one is connected components. So this gives us a threshold, and then based on where we are in the, based on where we put the threshold, it'll separate out, we can separate out the distinct bricks, but if we crank up the threshold enough, it just separates the sky versus the ground and the walls. Maybe the most useful point is somewhere like this, where it has split out the walls, and we very clearly detected out the floor even with the little grid lines on it, which might be a useful post-processing step, or sorry, pre-processing step, before we try to do our sort of distance analysis of how far away the wall is. But on the other hand, I'm not sure that being able to detect individual bricks is terribly useful, but some sequence of these filters may make the processing easier. So those are the three examples that I wanted to demonstrate. And now that I've demonstrated those three examples, I want to go ahead and write a quick program. So in order to write that program, I'm going to bring myself back over to the normal coding config that I work in. I'm going to go to Scratch, 535, V09. Oh, this is in the Scratch directory under V09 is where I'm working. I'm going to write a program called genmat.cpp. It's actually already in here, but I want to write it because it's a little bit clearer what all the pieces are when I'm doing that. This is going to be a program that uses the opencv API to do a little bit more, to actually manipulate an image. So to use opencv, we need a header. And the header that I want is opencv2/high-GUI.hpp. So high-GUI is the built-in graphic user interface. It stands for high-level graphic user interface that opencv provides. This is useful for sort of experiments. It's not necessarily what you want for any sort of useful program, but if you just want to pop up a window with an image in it so you can see what's going on, this is super convenient. Now, also going to include, note, we're just going to say using namespace CV and using namespace standard. I don't even think we're using anything from the standard namespace here, but why not? Int main. So this is just a generic C++ program. So what we're going to do is we're going to generate an image using the opencv API, and it's just going to be a 500 by 500 image. Now, to use a window in this API, in this this high GUI thing, there are two steps. First, we say named window, and that'll pop up, or that'll tell it that we want to in the future pop up a window, and that we want the title bar to say image. So that first thing is the thing we put in the title bar. Now I'm going to create an actual data structure to store an image in. And opencv has been built by computer vision people. Computer vision people, for some reason, think that any multidimensional array in a computer is a matrix, because they took too many linear algebra classes in college. It's not clear that linear algebra actually makes any sense as the way to do about half of or the way to talk about half the things that they're doing. But in any case, the data structure that we use to store images in opencv is this matrix or mat data type. So we're going to create a mat named image. It's going to be 500 by 500, and the data type of the cells in this matrix is going to be CV8UC3. So this is a color image a color image, so there are 3 channels, and each channel is an 8-bit unsigned integer. So we're doing 24-bit color in the sort of normal way for images. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to say for in ii0, ii is less than nn. Same thing with jj. We're going to go ahead and loop through this image, and we're going to fill in all the cells. And the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to say image.at, and then this has to be templated. So each cell in this image is actually a vec3b, so a mathematical vector of length 3, where each one is a byte, or an unsigned 8-bit integer. So at iijj, we're going to fill that in with a vec3b, and the 3 values are going to be 0, 100, 0. And then I want to do imShow. So in the image, or sorry, in the named window with a title of image, we want to go ahead and display the mat named image, which contains our pixel data. And then in order for this to display anything, sort of this named window thing, and this imShow thing only actually do anything if we give a wait key command. Wait key is when it actually does something. If we specify a 0 here, it's going to wait until we press a key. It just blocks here. If we specify a non-zero number, that is a timeout in milliseconds, after which it will no longer wait for a key. And if we want to be super cheaty and have opencv high GUI stuff happening in a single sequential thread with other stuff, saying wait key 1 will pop up the window and show stuff without too much trouble. But here I just want it to pop up the window once. All right, now let's go back here and say make, so genmat. So that's going to pop up a window, and you can see the window here has an image in it, and this image is a 500 by 500 green box, which is weird because I said that no, this makes sense. So the middle thing is green. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we set the first thing to be 100. So save that off, compile it, and then run it. All right, so 100,0,0 gets us blue. And if you're used to dealing with colors in computers, that's real weird. What's going on here is that opencv, for some reason, works in a BGR color space. So this is blue, green, red, in that order. That's not how basically anyone else does it nowadays. I have hit BGR in a couple other places randomly, but RGB is much more common. And that's why if we go ahead and look at the starter code, for homework 8, over in cam.cc maybe, no, over in brain.cc, over in robot.cc, I'll eventually find where I put the code. In the robot thing, when it gets a frame, it does a conversion from RGB, which is what Gazebo works in, to BGR, which is what opencv works in. So you're going to end up getting a valid mat in the format that opencv is expecting from this like robot thing, but it is definitely kind of awkward to be working in VGR. In any case, let's go ahead and make this a little bit fancier. Let's make this II% 256. Let's make this JJ% 256. JJ over 256. Sorry, over 10. Over 10. Compile this. Now when we run this, we get pretty pictures, which seems like fun. But yeah, if you want to work with matrix data in opencv, you can get direct access to pixels with this image at thing, and it works equally well on the other side of the equal sign. This is a C++ R value, but that means that you can read or write here. All right, so that should be enough information for you to get started on homework 8. Good luck on completing the last assignment. Remember that you don't have to complete any assignments. There are bonus points available in the final project. You should have earned bonus points so far. It's not the end of the world if you don't get an A, but if you do complete this assignment, and if you can get a nice solid version of this assignment where you can get both the maze solving video and the mapping video done, you do have the opportunity to get 3 points here. So have fun.